Hi guys, how are you doing? Welcome back. I want to talk about using a GPU which you have sitting in your ESXi server, in your VMware ESXi vSphere platform, how you can utilize that GPU in that vSphere platform within a virtual machine running on that VMware vSphere platform and take advantage of that faster encoding and that faster transcoding of your video files. For example, I have a Jellyfin media server running on my Synology NAS. The problem is that when I'm in a place where my internet connection is slow and I want to stream something from that Jellyfin container on my Synology, it has to transcode my video files to a lower bitrate, but then because it's just a Synology NAS without special CPU, it is slow. It can be slow. Now I was thinking I have a VMware ESXi server. It has a integrated GPU sitting in that Intel processor. How can I pass that Intel GPU to a VM, to a virtual machine running on my VMware platform, and then take advantage of that hardware encoding, transcoding, and decoding of my video files? Let's get into it. So here we are on my ESXi host, and this is running a 11th gen Intel i5 CPU, and this CPU has an integrated GPU. But the first thing is that we have to configure vSphere to pass this GPU through to virtual machine. So the first thing we'll do is we'll select that host, which has that graphics card we want to use in our virtual machine. Now select the host, go to configure, then scroll down to hardware and then graphics, and make sure that using the edit button you have enabled the graphics device to be shared on for your virtual machines. Basically, this is the option you can set up, and there are some choices here. I choose to have that shared directly, and that means that I will see in my virtual machine, I will see the actual name and the actual settings and the properties of that physical GPU sitting in my Intel processor. So this is the option I choose for. Make sure you enable it. And then the next step is go into the virtual machine. Let's go into the virtual machine here. I have set it up. Make sure that that virtual machine is shut down. Let's shut this machine down because we have to add a specific PCI device, and that PCI device will be my graphics card. So I have powered off this virtual machine, and I will edit the hardware. I will add a new device, and my new device, it's a PCI device because this is the bus which contains that graphics card, the communication with the graphics card. So I will select PCI device, and now it tells me, all right, I see that there are two devices which I can pass through to this virtual machine. And I want to pass that Rocket Lake GPU. This is the Intel GPU sitting on that Intel CPU. All right, select it, and then click on OK. Now, another thing we have to set up here for this virtual machine to make sure that it's always using that integrated GPU is disable that virtual graphics driver from the VMware stack. The way we do it is we click on edit for the VM hardware, then go to advanced parameters, make sure that you find that svga.present attribute, and this attribute we have to change the value to false. Change it to false. This disables that virtual graphics driver from the VMware stack. Now we made sure with this change that there is only one graphics display driver being presented to that virtual machine. That's that physical one. And just in a moment, I will show you how to install actual drivers for it and make sure that the virtual machine can see it and can use it. Now, one important thing to note is that when disabling that svga.present parameter, that attribute in the advanced option of that virtual machine, when we start up this virtual machine now, when I click on power on, it will power on. But what will happen is this console will stay black. It will stay dark. There will be nothing to display there. And the reason why is because we disabled that VMware integrated virtual graphics driver. If you click on launch web console, it will just keeps on spinning. It won't show you anything. This is something to keep in mind when you need to troubleshoot this virtual machine from the console perspective. Well, you can just enable that attribute again, restart that virtual machine, and you will have display output running again in your console. All right, so my virtual machine is running. The next step is to install actual drivers for that integrated GPU I'm presenting for this virtual machine. Well, this is an Intel integrated GPU, so I have to install specific drivers for Intel. This is the link which from the official Intel support site, how to install drivers on Ubuntu. I will leave a link to this article, of course, in the description below. And what I will do now is I will execute these commands in a terminal connected to my virtual machine, and in the end we will have a working functional Intel driver sitting in my virtual machine. And then the next step will be to present it, of course, to my Jellyfin media container, my media running in Docker, and then show you that it is actually using this physical GPU from Intel. So the first thing is, let's check if my virtual machine can actually see this graphics card. Just execute the command lspci and it will show you all those PCI devices connected to this virtual machine within this virtual machine, of course. And as we can see here, this is that graphics card I want to use. This is the physical one I'm going to use in this virtual machine. Now that we've made sure that that virtual machine can actually see that physical graphics card, it's time to install some drivers. Well, let's just follow the steps here described on the Intel edocs. And what we're going to do is just copy paste these options, these commands. All right, now the driver has been installed. And of course, the next part would be to install the compute and media runtimes. But before we can do that, we have to reboot this virtual machine. Let's do it immediately, and so we can continue. Let's wait for it to reboot. Of course, I'm watching the console, but there is nothing there because I disabled this virtual video card driver. Let's log in into that virtual machine after the reboot has finished and continue installing some of the media runtimes and, of course, the drivers. All right, that's finished. We don't need the development packages actually. And of course, if you want to access that GPU capability, you have to do access or to apply some group membership. Let's do that immediately. Let's see if this driver is already available now, if this video card is there, and we can do it with this option. It is there. Okay, that's nice. Let's add my user to that group. And of course, because I'm not a root member, I will have to use this command to add myself to that group membership in order to use the rendering capabilities of this driver, of this graphics card. It has added my user to that group render. Okay, that is okay. Let's change that shell as well. All right. So basically now we are done installing all the drivers needed for that GPU we have set up to pass through from our vSphere, from our VMware host. Another very helpful tool which will then give us some utilities to check if this actual graphics card is being used is to install the Intel GPU tools. So I will do that now. And let's do sudo apt-get install Intel GPU tools. Okay, let's do that. And now this will show us if we do sudo and then tell it Intel GPU top. we can now watch that Intel Rocket Lake GPU doing something. So at the moment, it's not being used. It is there, it's waiting, it's sitting and ready to go. Let's go back to Portainer, connect to the local instance of Docker, and I will just set up a stack. This is a Jellyfin stack, and then I will show you how to pass the GPU through to Jellyfin. And let's paste the code I need to create a container, and also to make sure that the physical that iGPU I have running within this virtual machine is being presented to my Jellyfin container, so that Jellyfin can use the actual video card, that Intel GPU, to do some transcoding. So this is the option to add to that container, and make sure that, of course, your volumes are okay. And I have some media, some video sitting in storage in that volume. If it's okay, I will click on deploy to deploy the stack. It will go out, get the image from the Docker repository, and create a container named Jellyfin for me, which will be able to use that integrated GPU. The stack has been successfully deployed. Let's go to containers, and we can see that there is a Jellyfin container running there. Click on Jellyfin, and we can see several options. Portainer is very nice if you are doing something with Docker or container platform. Portainer is a very nice container to have to do some management web-based. So this is Jellyfin. Let's go to the quick start wizard real quick. Just create a simple password. Click on next. And now I can add my media library. And of course, my media library is a video library, and I will say it is sitting in the storage folder. So this is fine. Again, I can set up a lot of options here. I won't do that because I only want to show you how Jellyfin will use that transcoding option in that virtual machine, and how it will actually use that GPU pass-through. So I will leave these options as is. Click on OK. And if I go to my, click on next, just finish up setting this up. No remote connections, please. And we are done. Let's log in here. And I should be able to see yes, actually. This is some footage I took from my drone. And if I click on it, you can see it's 4K and SDR, of course. 4K, this is very big. It's a very large file, of course. If I wanted to use it to see this, to watch this in a place or in a hotel where the internet connection is not that fast, well, I need to transcode this. Now, the next thing is, within Jellyfin, we have to enable actual transcoding. So go click on that hamburger menu and click on dashboards. Click on playback, and within the playback option, we can now enable hardware acceleration for transcoding. Now, this is Intel QuickSync, so I will choose Intel QuickSync, and I can enable all these options, basically not the AV1, and say this is okay, everything's fine. And go at the bottom, scroll down and click on save. Got it, okay. So now Jellyfin will actually be able to use the virtual GPU, that physical GPU passed through from my VMware ESXi host to this virtual machine where Jellyfin is actually running. So if I go back to this Intel GPU top command, which I'm still running, you can see that at graphics cards, it is doing nothing here basically. Now, if I go back to my Jellyfin container and select that video and say I want to watch this, but then I want it to be transcoded. Well, click on play. Now it's running in 4K, of course. I don't want this because I know this will be very slow. So I will change the quality, for example, to 726 Mbps. So now the transcoding part will start. So it is doing some transcoding in the background, and when I go to my command, which is still running this Intel GPU, you can see very clearly this is running. This is now using that GPU which is being passed through from my VMware platform, and it's using that GPU to do some actual transcoding of this file, making sure that it can be played perfectly and smoothly on my endpoint device. Even if I have a very large file sitting on my Jellyfin server and my Jellyfin container, and I have a very slow internet connection to my endpoint device, my iPhone or my iPad, this Intel Rocket Lake GPU passed through from my VMware server will make sure that a transcoding happens very fast. If I go back to my video and if I jump to a specific segment and I go back, you can see how quick and fast it is. Go back to that Intel GPU top command and you see that Intel GPU actually being used from within my virtual machine, which is running Docker and which is running Jellyfin. So these are the basic steps you need to perform in order to get that GPU which is sitting on your vSphere platform in that virtual machine. In my case, it is a Linux Ubuntu virtual machine, so you have to set up pass-through for that GPU from your vSphere platform, and then you have to install actual Intel drivers because it's an Intel GPU. You have to install those Intel drivers in this virtual machine. Now, if you have set it up, you can see that transcoding is working perfectly. It's offloading a lot of the transcoding and decoding of that video file to that GPU which you have passed through. So that is very nice. And of course, you can now use the same setup to do some encoding and decoding of very large video files if you need to do some heavy editing, for example. As always, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to click on the like button below. And if there are questions, if you have comments, leave them in the comment section below. I will get to them as soon as possible. And see you next time. Bye.